Yes. Welcome. We're back. It's episode 61 of the Music Guy podcast. My name's Al Rowe. I'm a music guy. I make records. I play guitar. I sing songs. I teach online. I'm surviving the quarantine with my friend Michael Hebbs, all the way from Whitby, Ontario. How are you, my dude?
Whitby.
Whitby.
I'm fucking going crazy, man. If we they've extended the lockdown, and I understand why.
Yeah.
I totally get it.
Yeah.
But I'm still going fucking crazy.
I hear you,
my
man.
sanity level was here, and normal people's is here, but at the beginning it was here, and now it's fucking right down here. But it's good kind of crazy. Like, it's manic. I'm gonna be more, I don't know, fucking
more
manic.
productive, sporadically.
Yeah.
We have another.
We're both going crazy.
We have another Whitby native with us on the show today. Very excited to have him here, and I thank him very much for taking the time to come on. A good friend of Mike and myself. It's Mr. Nathan Whitney, all the way from Etobicoke on the west side of Toronto.
Hello, everyone. Yes. Thanks for having me, guys.
Welcome, dude.
Whitby, a great town for a guitar.
Yeah, just like a real Legends row of guitar players coming out of Whitby, right? Mike Hebbs, Will Hebbs.
There's a pretty. Who else? There's a few people that have gone on to do things from like Durham region specifically that like you wouldn't think of, like
Aaron Bales.
I forget her name.
Aaron
there you go. Yep. And there's like some players that there's one girl, I forget her name now. She went to high school in Bowmanville, but she ended up playing guitar and keyboards for like some British death metal band that was pretty popular. Not Cannibal Corpse. What was the name of the band?
Oh, you're talking about Lindsay Matheson and
yes.
Oh God, what's the name of the band though? They all wear the crazy goth makeup.
Yeah,
death thing.
But it's like they were a really big band. I'm so far removed from like the death goth scene, so I'm not sure. But like, there's a lot of people that are doing goth stuff. Not a death goth. I'm a goth death, but yeah.
There you go.
There's a lot of people. There's a lot of talent in Durham region that you just don't think of, and yeah, it's pretty interesting.
And like a bunch of the players from used to play in the Beggars. You guys were mostly like a cover kind of bar band, but like the lineup of that band was absurdly good. Mike Sloot was from that area as well, right? The singer.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. Yeah. He I think he's living back in Whitby again, right? Yeah. So yeah, he's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just for folks who haven't met Nathan before, Nathan is the guitarist for Thomas Rhett, one of the biggest country artists going right now, and just a great singer, great songwriter, great performer. The show, I mean, been fortunate to see the show once or twice, at least once from side stage. I think it was Boots and Hearts. It was a number of years ago. I'm not sure if you were in the band at that time or not, Nathan. I don't remember.
If it was 2 years ago, yes. If it was like 5 years ago, no.
I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was about 5 years ago.
I think he was there. Yeah, no, because I was there, and I don't think I was ever at Boots and Hearts when Nathan wasn't in that band.
Mm. Gotcha. Anyways,
why are we keeping track of each other better?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Why are we all such horrible
Did you know that
friends?
Nathan got me my first gig? My first paying gig?
I did not.
I shit you not. It was a New Year's thing. I don't even know where it was. It was some New Year's thing, and it was a reading thing too. Like they had a book of 500 tunes, the Gig Bros or something like that. Yeah.
Or was it like Kim and Company or something like that? Or it was like the Brian Rose band back in the day? It was like a function, like wedding band sort of thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And
okay. I remember I got the book and I was like, oh fuck, I have to read music. It was interesting. I mean, first time actually getting paid money to do music.
That's awesome, man. Well, I'm glad I could help, and I set you on this wonderfully lucrative path.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
Look at us now.
Yeah.
Living the dream.
So-
in Whitby,
So,
Music City.
but you know, pre-quarantine, of course, your current sort of working situation was you're just on the road a good amount of the year with Thomas, and that was sort of your main and is and will be again, I'm sure, like your main gig and your top priority in terms of work.
Yes, 100%. Since I got into Thomas's band back in 2017, and it's just been constant go with the road work, which has been amazing. I'm really lucky though that, and I'm sure you guys know from the country scene, it's not so much like you get on the road in March and then you don't get home again till October. It's not like the pop or rock worlds where it's just extended tours. In country, it's a lot of weekend warrior type things. So you're playing shows every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then you're home Sunday at some point, and then you get on the road on Wednesday again. So yeah, it's really I love working for Thomas. He's a great guy. He's a killer artist, a killer songwriter. The guys in the band have become some of my best friends in the world, and it's such a fun gig. And I am the luckiest guitar player in Nashville that doesn't even live in Nashville. So yeah, I'm really lucky that way.
Yeah, it's amazing that you
It's
can
funny
come home and still have a family life. I mean, you have a wife and daughter. You recently became a dad, somewhat recently, and you're you're able to kind of do all that stuff and still have time for that. You're not gone 200 days a year or whatever. That's an amazing situation, right?
It's funny because it's so much different than like have you ever watched Inside the Tour Bus? It's by the guy who created Hank Hill, and it's about country musicians like day. Like
I've seen the first. I think I have that, but I've only seen the first episode. Right? Yeah, and it's all the stories of like how crazy it is
all the time. Yeah, and like they're on amphetamines because they're touring so much, and like it's funny that it's become more healthy. Like because like all those guys were fucked before because they were gone all the time, and like it'd be like we play a gig and then somebody needs to drive the bus, so you're just gonna do a bunch of pills.
Man, it's like part of me is like that sounds like it could have been a lot of fun back in the day, but I'm so thankful to be touring in a time and day and age where I wake up in the morning and there's a trainer on the road and he's like, okay, go for a run. All right, we're gonna do this workout program, all this kind of stuff. Yeah, we've got a great guy. He's not our guy, he's Thomas's guy, Larry Donald. He's a good buddy, he's a good friend, but he's willing to help you out if you need something. And the first year I toured with Thomas, I definitely put on like the touring musician equivalent of the freshman 15. I definitely was like, catering 3 meals a day, what? Like I eat better on the road than I do at home. So like I definitely put on a little weight that first year. But I've been, even during quarantine, I've been really aware of like, well, I can play the guitar, but like people want to look at something nice on stage. So like,
it's true.
Gotta, and for our Thomas's show, it is 100% active. It's like I can think of there's 3 or 4 songs where I'm standing in one spot. The rest of the show, you're running from side to side. You're running up and down. Last year we had I want to say it was like 250 feet. It was long. It was like it was like a hockey arena length catwalk from the front of the stage. And there was a couple solos where I'd have to be 3/4 of the way down and then for my solo and then run all the way back in. There's places to be. So you can't just like, it's not just sitting around eating donuts and drinking coffee and then getting up and standing and still and playing a guitar.
You're not shoegazing.
Yeah, you're running, you're going. So yeah, being healthy on the road has been really, really good it's good for your sanity. It's good for, we work for like the show's 90 minutes. We have sound check for maybe between half an hour and an hour every day. So that's 2.5 hours. Then there's, another 21.5 hours to kill, and you can only sleep so long and you can only, watch Netflix so long. So working out's a great way to pass some time and feel good about yourself.
Have you found that your hands, because I remember you saying when you were younger that your hands sometimes were bothering you. Do you find that your hands are better now that you're exercising more? That's what I found.
I definitely, it's funny because I just experienced a bit of an injury where my hands got really bad, but yeah, for the most part, working out and exercising, like especially when I was doing a lot of yoga, it was like when all your tendons and muscles are stretching and doing all the right thing, it's really, really good. Recently, I've started running a lot lately, and just back at the beginning of December, it hasn't been snowing much here in Toronto, so I was just still out running outside, and I tripped over, one of the classic Toronto sidewalks where one brick is like this and the other's like that, and I tripped and I hit my elbow, and it's like I started my left hand went numb, like just like pins and needles, like
oh no,
like, and it just kept on. Yeah, it was one of those things. I ended up getting a referral to a specialist, and luckily it was like you've heard of carpal tunnel syndrome, right? But there's also cubital tunnel syndrome, which is another nerve that handles carpal tunnel handles your first and your thumb and your first finger, and then cubital tunnel is the nerve that goes to these three fingers. And I had compressed the cubital tunnel nerve when I hit my elbow, so there's some injury happening there, but luckily it's not so serious and it's been getting better, so I'm really thankful about that.
Just
so
time, I guess, right?
Yeah, and you just need to give it time to expand back or whatever nerves do. But definitely in the grand scheme of things, like exercise makes you so much of a better musician. It's like you're not only it like you feel better about yourself so you can play better. It's like, what's that at the end of A Mighty Wind? Do you remember that movie? About it's the spoof. Oh, it's a spoof movie. Oh, I forget. It's the guys that did Waiting for Guffman and Best in Show.
And,
okay.
Isn't it the guys that did Spinal Tap?
Yeah. But it's all about the folk music scene. But at the end of the movie, there's one of the bass players in one of the bands. He comes out as, I guess, a cross-dresser or transgendered. But he says, you play so much better when you feel good about yourself. And it was like, at the time of this movie being made, it was sort of like tongue in cheek and kind of silly and whatnot. But it's so true. If you feel good, you play better. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's like 100%, whether it's by exercising or just like making sure that you wash your hair that day. I don't know. You always feel better. Yeah. So
yeah. Right. I've noticed that with Will. Will can do like those manly fucking bends where he like grabs the neck and just rips on them, because he's always been like a strength training guy, and I just couldn't. And like I still like I can now ish, but like I feel like Will could break the guitar neck in half if he really wanted. He's a strong guy,
I would not want to meet Will in a dark alley when he's trying to do a bend on the guitar neck, because he might take everyone out.
Yeah. It's like 300 pounds of pressure on those things, right? Something like that.
Sure. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
So if we can walk back just a tiny bit, for folks out there who don't know you, so you're now, or pre-COVID or whatever, pretty much full-time touring musician, one of the most popular, awesome sounding bands going. Can you give like some kind of a bio to people just about like how you got started? Like I know you went to Humber for a bit, that kind of stuff.
Sure. Yeah. Started playing guitar when I was 12, played in high school, and got to a certain point where it was like the only thing I really wanted to do. So I thought I better, my parents wanted me to go to school and get an education. So I decided to go to Humber. And this was, I'm a little bit older than you guys, but this was like 2000 was the first time I went to Humber. And I did the diploma, and I got my diploma in jazz, which really for me means a whole lot of nothing. But I ended up going and working on cruise ships for 6 years after I finished college, and which was a great experience. And I highly recommend doing 1 or 2 contracts on a cruise ship if cruise ships ever come back, because it's a great way to really hone your chops and get some real world playing experience without having the pressure of like ruining your reputation in your local scene. You can ruin it out on the ocean when you get home. But if you
leave it out in international waters,
on the open seas, exactly, like chuck your reputation overboard. Don't worry, let the sharks have it.
Yeah.
But it's a great way to cut your teeth playing, and then. but I recommend doing it 1 or 2 times, but because there's a certain point you do it once or you do it your entire life. But I was one of those people that did it for 6 years, which is kind of a weird middle ground. And it definitely, you know, I feel like I'm about 10 years behind a lot of my peers that are the same age, just because I wasn't around to get gigs when I was, you know, in my mid to late 20s, because I was out working on cruise ships. But anyways, I got back to Toronto after working on ships, went back. I didn't have anything going on, so I thought I'll go back to school. So I went back and did my degree, and it was like a 2-year program in addition to what I'd done before. At that point, that's when I met Al, and we actually played in a pretty awesome pop punk band for a moment.
Yeah.
We definitely toured across Canada together in some fashion, which was really a good experience for me, and I think for all of us, to learn how not to tour and how to value ourselves as musicians.
Closer to the
it was really eye-opening experience.
Closer to the TV show you're talking about, where like whoever's the most awake is driving, and you know, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny 'cause, like with that sort of thing, everybody always, not now, but like, I guess they always assume that musicians were like, oh, just all like into drugs and unhealthy sort of lifestyles. And it's like, I don't think that's the case anymore, because I feel like record labels and like business people realize like, yeah, if these people are fucked up, they're going to like crash and burn, you know? Like, if we take care of these people, then we'll make more money.
For anybody, like, I think we all know who Rick Emmett is between the three of us. And he used to teach the music business course, and he always said, which is the bigger word, music or business? And it's business, and so that's what you have to focus on. And I think people back, you know, I have no experience, but back in up to the 80s and 90s even, there was a certain level of the management and those type of people that could herd cats, and the people that had the talent but may have had addiction problems or had mental health issues, they could make sure that they could do the job so those people could make money. And that was that. But at this point, you don't want to deal with that. I don't want to be in a band with people that, you know, are self-destructive intentionally all the time for no other reason other than they can be self-destructive. I understand if people have like I said, mental health or addiction issues, those are 100% understandable, but you can't, it's just non-functional in a professional business, because we are professionals and we're trying to, at the end of the day, I'm trying to make money so I can support my wife and my daughter and have a roof over their heads and keep food on our table. And that's what it comes right down to. And if anyone's going to get in the way of that because of their destructive habits, I can't be a part of that. I can't associate with it. So that's part of it. So we and then like to your point about like people used to think that's what people used to do. People used to just have bad lifestyles, not because of drugs or alcohol so much, but because there are 4 guys that are driving from Toronto to Winnipeg in 21 hours when it should take 26 hours because they've got a gig the next a day and a half later that they have to make it. Touring, especially in Canada, is hard on your body. And you can't, like, trying to feed yourself properly, trying to get enough sleep, trying to get enough exercise. It's nearly impossible.
Hey, to be fair, we weren't all on drugs on this particular tour.
No, we weren't. None of us.
No. Nice thing as well.
It was it was more about the schedule being extremely rigorous and like Nathan saying that the time frames being insane.
Who has money for drugs and alcohol?
It was a dry tour. It was a dry tour. Do you remember that?
It was
like we couldn't even have a beer.
No,
I should do an episode about that tour. I don't want to, like, you know, I don't know. Maybe
you could
maybe
use
I
like a pseudonym for the company.
Yeah, pseudomonyms.
Let me tell you a story.
Anyway, so
about
pretty much.
Sorry, go ahead.
We met and we did that tour and finished my degree, and then I just started working in Toronto and doing the whole wedding band, cover band, teaching, hustling, anything I could do, digging ditches if I needed to, whatever. Did that for a few years, got connected with a few people in the country scene in Toronto, And that's really what sort of kickstarted what I would define as my true professional, at least professionally playing for original artists, part of my career. And that started back in 2013, 2014. And then, yeah, just hustling like everyone, doing the usual Canadian country summer, play 13 or 14 festivals, some random rib fests, all that kind of stuff, and then get back to the weddings and bar mitzvahs in the winter sort of thing.
Yeah.
I did manage to play for an alternative act in 2016, 2017. So I think it was early 2017, 2016. And we toured down in the States, and that's where I got my first taste of similar sort of tour that we did, where it was a van, and I think we played 42 shows in 40 days because we had we played South by Southwest sort of thing. So we were doing multiple shows a day, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But that was my first like van tour and touring experience in the United States, and got me I had to get a visa for that. And it was my first foray into that. The next year I had a visa, but I didn't have that specific tour. And I actually I had a few studio dates lined up on my visa, which allowed me to get the visa, but there was nothing major happening. And then I got a call just randomly one night in February from my friend who plays drums for Thomas. And he said, "Is your visa good?" And that was the first question out of his mouth. And I was like, "Well, yeah, I've got my visa. What's going on?" Thinking because he was the guy that hired me to do some studio work. And I thought he might need me for an extra studio session, which you're allowed to add on to your visa if it's within the certain times of your visa. But it turns out that Thomas's guitar player at the time had some family stuff going on that prevented him from going on tour. And for them, the tour actually started 9 days later. So I got a call on a Monday night, and the tour started the following Thursday. So I said, "Yeah, my visa's good." And they said, "Well, we need you down here tomorrow." I said, "I can hop in the car in the morning and be down there." Like, "No, we need you here tomorrow morning." So I was up that night all night learning tunes, reviewing tunes. It was one of those things where I actually had charted a whole bunch of Thomas Rhett tunes for cover gigs, but also had just charted a lot of tunes off the record just cause sort of. And so I just walked over to my chart shelf and pulled off the charts and started reviewing songs and getting my stuff together that way. And then the next morning, I think it was like 4 a.m., I left my apartment and got on a plane at 5:30, and I was in Nashville at 8, and I was playing with the band at 10 a.m. in the morning. It was crazy. And then the tour started.
Shit.
Tour started like 9 days later. So yeah, pretty crazy story. So,
yeah.
We did the tour, and they liked me, so I've been I've been doing it for the last 4 years, I guess, technically. Yeah.
Wow.
It's amazing how
yeah.
I mean, this is fairly unique, but you do hear of these things where it's like, "Yeah, man, I got this insane call for this huge band. The gig was the next day, so I just had to." Like, I think Eddy told a similar story about going playing for Shawn Mendes. It was like, "Yeah, I just like learned the whole show, and then showed up." And it's like, people wonder what it takes to play with top acts like that. And not to say that every situation is going to be down to the wire last minute, but like, if you want to be the type of person who gets called to play with top acts, this is one of the things you have to be able to do. Is like, no problem, I'll be there, A, and B, I'll have the songs down, and it's like tomorrow. It just takes a lifetime of preparation for that.
It does, and this is one thing I will attribute to especially the Toronto cover band scene, that there have been for the 5 years between college and getting the call for the TR gig, there was a lot of like getting calls on Tuesday nights to play a bar on Friday night, and it's 45 songs that you've never played, and it's 125 or $150, and then the person who calls you says, "Oh yeah, and no charts," and so you're like, at the time you're like, well, I need $150 and I've got nothing else going on, so I am going to learn 45 songs. I'm going to memorize 45 songs and get this happening. So you do it, and you do that all the time. And one thing for me was like, when I got the call, and it was like, well, you have to have 17 songs together for next Thursday. And I'm like, so I have 9 days to memorize 17 songs. I'm like, okay. It's like the Toronto scene really prepared me to do that and to get it together. Now, like I said, I had charts, and charts allow me in rehearsals to ensure that I'm playing parts right. But just the actual memorization part, it's doing that. It's like muscle memory almost. What for learning songs, like you just get so used to like, okay, this is like an AAB form, this is a verse chorus, so what, you figure it all out, and just filling it in the spots. It's pretty impressive and I give all credit to the Toronto cover and wedding band scene for giving me those skills. I hated it, but it's great.
Yeah. Well, I feel like the thing that you were saying, like, it's like, oh, Al, about like, yeah, like you get these last minute calls, and that's not always the case, but it's true. Like if you are like willing to like seize that opportunity and be like, yeah, I'm just not going to sleep that night or those nights. It's like, but then I get to play with them, and maybe they'll, call me again later, like you got to be willing to do it.
You totally have to be willing to do it. Even if you fall flat on your face, at least you try.
Yeah.
That's like, man, that's the biggest thing for any venture that I've come across, is like, I've failed so many times. I've like the first time I auditioned for an original act, Fifi Dobson. I don't know if you guys remember.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah. Back. This is like 20 years ago now. Like that's obviously showing my age, but like 20 years ago, somebody mentioned there was the Fifi Dobson edition. This was for first record that had just come out, and I got hired. Or I got in, I got through the audition process or whatever. I was in the band for one day. The other guitar player was actually Dan Cantor, who went on to MD and play for Justin Bieber, and he's huge in LA now. But it was one of those things, like I didn't understand what was going on with the, like, just like the only word I can think of is like the politics, but just like how you be cool in situation. And I wasn't cool at all. I was the most non-cool person ever, and they recognized that, and they said, I remember one time it was like, all right, it was like that first day after rehearsal, it's like, all right, everyone, appreciate it, can the band head back to the green room? Nathan, can you hold up 1 second? And I was like, oh yeah, sure, no problem, guys. And then they said, thanks for coming out, this was great, but it's not going to work out, sort of thing. So like it was really good, and I learned a lot about that from that situation. But I don't regret going out for it at all. Like I learned and I failed, and there've been so many times in my life where I've tried something and I'm falling flat on my face. But it's like that great Michael Scott quote, you're going to miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Wayne Gretzky.
Yeah.
Very nice reference. Very nice reference.
Who just turned 60 yesterday, I think. For you hockey fans out there. Yeah. So and I think it's like interesting. It's, you're saying it's like you have to be willing to take that chance, and I'll learn the whole show, and I'll show up tomorrow and jam with you guys. And I think anybody would, for the most part, if Thomas Rhett called any of us up, or like any guitar player out there and said, show up tomorrow, we're rehearsing. It's like, cool, I'll be there. But if it's like, I think it's like Nathan said, if you haven't done that 100 times already for gigs that you were kind of like, I'm doing this because I need the money kind of thing, or like, or what have you, like, or it was a gig you really liked. But it's like, if you haven't gone through that process that many times, when you show up to the big gig, it's like you're not gonna have those years of experience under your belt of like you're nailing these songs, and people are like, yeah, okay, sweet. It's gonna be evident that you haven't done this before. You haven't pulled an all-nighter and learned a whole show before. So but that, man, that's a heck of a story, man. What are some like highlight reel gigs like over the last few years? There must be like, I saw a photo of you on Instagram somewhat recently where you were like, it was Reba singing and you were like kind of right there, and I was like, that's awesome. Yeah,
we just did the CMA Awards down in Nashville. Well, we like, since Thomas is at a certain level in the Nashville and country music world, he often will be performing on or presenting on these shows, and it's a whole thing where he likes to have the band there playing with him. So it's awesome. It's awesome for us because some guys like they'll just do it to track or whatever, and that's great, and that's what you have to do. But they don't bring out the band, or they have like the house band playing for them or whatever. But Thomas likes having his band in. It's such a great experience to get up there and play. But this last time, we played. He released a single back in the spring called "Be a Light," and it was like a big sort of thing where it was Reba, it was Chris Tomlin, it was Hillary from Lady A. Am I forgetting anybody else who was on it? I can't remember now. Oh, that's embarrassing. But he released this single and it had all these guest singers on it, and we performed it at the CMAs. And I was socially distanced, probably 7.5 feet away from Reba for that performance. And that is playing a show with Thomas is amazing. But when I'm sure anybody who's in the scene gets to, you get to be that close to country music royalty. And it's pretty cool, and get to say, hey, Reba, and she's like, hey, doesn't know your name, but she says, hey, and it's nice, so it's pretty cool.
She doesn't need to know your name. It's
she
special anyway.
No, we know her name. She doesn't need to know our name.
Exactly it. I saw a video of you, and this is not a highlight gig thing, but speaking of a very active show, you did a power slide in a Ninja Turtle outfit.
Yeah, I've done that. I did that once or twice. Yeah, that was really fun. That was 2 years ago in Sacramento, California. It was the Halloween show, and we all dressed up like Ninja Turtles. And I think it was when we played. It was like the last song of the night, and I had a big solo. And I was like, well, if I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it. So I ran on power slide, and it was pretty fun. But highlight gigs are
practice a power slide?
I've been practicing a power slide since I was 11 years old, man. I've been rock and roll since the
because I would just be afraid to biff real hard. We've all seen Pick of Destiny with Tenacious D.
Man, I've biffed more power slides in my life than I can count on all of our hands. It's if you're not afraid, if you don't try and fail, you're not going to be able to do it, right? So power slides are right there.
There you go. But you stuck the landing on that one though.
Yeah, and so when it comes to highlight gigs, playing any of these award shows is pretty amazing. For actual shows, my very first year we played Stagecoach Festival in California, which is the country version of Coachella. And there, I was in the band for maybe 6 weeks, and it was Thomas's first headlining tour. So we had been playing. When you do your first headlining tour, you're playing 3,000 to 5,000 cap small arenas, and I was kind of used to that from doing some big shows in Canada. So we had done those shows, but then we fly out to play Coachella, and there are 100,000 people, or at Stagecoach, and there are 100,000 people there. So, and we're headlining. So when we go out to play, I'm like, oh wow, there's 100,000 people out there. But at that point, they're so far away. It's I think I've said this before to maybe you guys or to other people for sure. It's at that point when there's so many people, they don't even really matter in a sense. It's sure. I think I feel more nervous about playing for 50 people that are up close and personal than 100,000 people that are all the way out there. I'm more interested at those big gigs at making sure that I'm connecting with the guys on stage musically, and to ensure that the show goes well, that the music sounds good, that Thomas is having a good time and enjoying it. So that's the big thing there.
They are ants, I would say Michael. Remember that reference? Simpsons? No? Sorry, go on.
I didn't hear it cut out.
Go on.
Hey. I was just going to say the other two sort of highlight gigs that we played Madison Square Gardens last year, which was pretty surreal to headline. And Thomas sold it out, and just to be able to go and say I played Madison Square Gardens, that's just pretty amazing. And then when we played Saturday Night Live, 2 years ago, Saturday Night Live was pretty cool. And the coolest thing that wasn't even playing the show, but was the fact that to see Lorne Michaels, and to see Paul Rudd was there, and just to see these people that are comedy legends in history. These once again, these are comedy royalty, and just to be cool, Like that's the coolest thing about it. And playing on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's sweet.
Yeah.
Man, that's got to be unreal. What was I gonna ask you now? Oh yeah. The one thing that psychs me out, I've done only a handful of shows in front of many people, but like, you know, you say it's like, yeah, that you feel more nervous in front of 50. I still manage to psych myself out because I imagine like the manager of like one of the other bands or like the headliner is like watching the show and like. So like I psych myself out by thinking about like one person that could be in the audience, and then I you know, I always find some way to like to psych myself out. Like I don't know if you have any sort of tips or like experience on with battling that, or if that's something that doesn't really get to you usually.
Well, I would say there's a few things. First off, 99% of the time, like the only reason why we think that is because our egos involved.
Yeah.
And because we're the only people that are thinking about ourselves like that. Everyone else is thinking about the concert itself. They're thinking about, you know, that cute guy or girl that's next to them, and they're thinking about how they're going to go to the bathroom or where they're going to get a beer. They don't care. We're the only people that are involved in that. So once you realize that, you can sort of flip it around and say, rather than me caring about myself so much, why don't I care about the people in the audience so much? And that for me is a huge thing. Is sometimes especially some of the big venues, I'll take the time to walk all the way to the back of the venue and see where people who still paid a lot of money got seats, and I have to entertain them and I have to connect with them all the way at the back. And so not thinking about myself so much and thinking about connecting with the people who are like, we're musicians, but we're entertainers, and we're here to make the show for these people. We might be doing the same show every single night, so it's the same thing. It's kind of boring to us sometimes, but for those people that come to the show, that's the one time they're going to see that show. And that may or may not be the only show they see that year. So like just being aware of that and flipping the ego around and just being like, and I'm not saying like ego as it's bad. It's like, we are human. We live up here, you know? So just being focused on the audience is huge, huge. So
what you're saying is you would sing Take It to the Limit if, I
would.
If asked to.
Yes.
Reference to
the biggest thing, the biggest thing I think is just preparation. Like if you can play and sing songs in your sleep, if you're not thinking about, oh, it's going to the bridge, or is it an A major or is it an F sharp minor, that's huge. As soon as you can take that stuff out of the equation, where you're not thinking about the mechanics of playing the song or doing the gig, then that's great. When it can just be go up and have some fun, that's huge.
Speaking of mechanics, I mean, you offer lessons, right?
I do offer lessons. Right now I'm doing Skype and Zoom and online lessons. Yeah. And
I've been taking lessons recently, and it's made a world of a difference, especially like for people like playing for a while. I definitely think it's worth taking lessons. How would people get in touch with you to do that? I think you can visit my you can check out my website, music.com. Or you can probably an easier way is just go on Instagram at Nathan Whitney Music. You can just reach out to me that way. I'm just posting some stuff on Instagram and throwing the tabs up for those licks and things up on my website, so you can download and check that out. So I'm just doing that. And like in the last year, I've taken 3 lessons myself. And it gets, when you're younger and you're just starting out to play, taking lessons every week is beneficial, because there's so much exponential growth that happens. You get to a certain point where, your growth plateaus, and often we're professionals, so we're playing and we're working, we're doing all that sort of stuff. But to kickstart you onto that next level, taking lessons this past year has been really, really good for me. Just to have new ideas and new concepts thrown at me, whether it be musical stuff or technique stuff. I've had a really good lesson back in December with the guitar player who plays for, what's the name of this band? The guitar player's name is Billy Campbell. He is a shred machine, and he's really, really inspiring. And
he taught me some things, and I don't want to give away his secrets or anything like that, but he just taught me some conceptual things that have changed the way I've approached practicing and playing and stuff. And I've even seen the difference in the last 6 weeks of practicing this stuff, which is really good. So yeah, taking lessons from anybody, non guitarist, is really good. You know, taking lessons from pianists and digging into that, or drummers, even talking about groove and time and all that kind of stuff really is really, really good.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. 'Cause I had the same thing that I was talking about. Like, definitely when I was playing bigger gigs, I haven't played nearly any of them, but, it's like, if I can get to that point that you're talking about where it's like, oh, I'm really practiced, and like I know the songs really well, and like the lessons, like having my technique sorted out, it makes it so that when I get nervous, I'm not like, adrenaline doesn't make me fuck up as much. You know what I mean? So definitely lessons are a very good thing. You were saying, because you have quite a grip on the technical side of things as well. You're saying you're really into that one YouTube channel.
Well, Troy Grady and Cracking the Code. Yeah. That stuff has been really, like, I remember first seeing the videos. I want to say it had to be 5 or 6 years ago, even longer, when they first came out. And I didn't quite understand it at first, but after delving into it and spending some time, I finally got the concept of what he's talking about. It's all about the angle that your pick enters and exits the string, the plane of the string. So it's really mind blowing. And just like for myself, I used to play fast but sloppy because it's just like the number of notes per string did not line up with the type of picking technique I was using. So, and it's simple as like, it's really silly, but like I used to hold my pick like this, and now I'm holding my pick like this, and it makes huge amount of difference with the lines that I'm playing and how I've set up to play certain scales and certain licks. And do I switch back and forth between those two angles? Definitely. But to go from 25-ish years of holding my pick like this over it's taken me almost a year and a half to get comfortable holding my pick like this. It's the weirdest thing, the forearm muscles and all that kind of stuff comes in play, and you have to unlearn one way and learn the other way, and then go back to the old way to make sure you can still do it that way because you switch back and forth. It's a whole system, and Troy does a really amazing job of breaking that down and making it very accessible to us as mere mortals. Because like he studies like the Yngwie Malmsteens, he studies the Rusty Coolies, he studies the Mike Stearns.
I saw Frank Gambale on there once.
Frank Gambale and Andy, like all those like real heavy technical players that we all know, like even the bluegrass people like Molly Tuttle, like the way she picks.
She's insane. Holy shit.
She's so good. She's so good. And so musical. When like she's playing and then she starts singing and you're like, well, I give up. I just give up.
So
we should all just quit right now.
For the just for the audio listeners, and also for me, because I'm just seeing what you showed me there. So are you angling your like you're turning your wrist so that your pick is like almost coming away from the body of the guitar a little bit, rather than like so that your pick is in and the palm of your hand is out?
Well, it's basically what I'm talking about is if you're standing or sitting and playing guitar, when you do a downstroke, does your hand and does the pick go away from the guitar or go towards the guitar? Okay. That's what it all comes down to. So I was an upward pick slanter, which means when I think you might have changed the formula for this or the words for this, but basically when I did a downstroke on the guitar, my hand went out and away. And when I did an upstroke, it came in and hit the body. Okay. So what I had to do was turn it the other way so that when I did downstroke, it would go in towards the body. And when I did an upstroke, it would come away from the body of the guitar. And that's the best way I can sort of describe it.
And that is more optimal to do it, to have it come away when you go up?
What I realized is that all it has to do is with if you start with an upstroke or a downstroke, and how many notes are on each string when you're playing a line. Okay. Because if you're doing like 3 note per, I used to do 3 note per string. So if I started the original way where I'm going away, using a downstroke and going away from the body of the guitar, I would go away, in on the second note, and away on the third note, which is fine. But on the next, if I move up a set of strings, I would go in on the first note, out on the second note, and in again on the third note. So when I'm trying to go up to the next set of strings, I actually have to move my wrist up and over a string and then begin the pattern again.
I see.
So when you're like doing it that way, now that is kind of the best way. If you're doing two-way pick slanting, it's about like on that last note, that sixth note, if you're going down, up, down on one string, and then up, down, up on the second string, you're slightly turning your wrist to do the opposite pick motion, going up and then beginning over again and going back to the original. It is the most, but the thing, it sounds crazy, but it's the most subtle, small motion you would ever imagine. Like, it's not like you're going, for those who are listening on audio, it's like turning the doorknob, right? You turn it a certain way, but rather than turning it 45 degrees, you're turning it 1 degree, and you're turning it 1 degree back, and 1 degree left, 1 degree right. That's like how subtle the motion can be. Troy goes into like a really, really good explanation of this, but it takes a while, especially if you are, especially for people who have naturally been like upward pick slanters like myself. A lot of the program goes into like
that.
Yeah, downward pick, like playing into the Eric Johnson lines. I used to practice those lines, the pentatonic sextuplets. Literally, I practiced those for 20 years, and I could not get them past 102, 103 beats per minute. Changing my picking and being aware of it, I can like, when I'm warmed up, I can get through them at like 120, 125 beats per minute, sometimes 130 beats per minute. Like, it's really mind-boggling how like the very subtle manipulations of your muscles and the slight changes of the angle that your wrist is, or your forearm is, or your elbow is, can impact your speed. It's mind-boggling. Wow. And also even just like, we often hear about the economy of motion, and that's a huge part of it. But one thing that Troy talks about and demonstrates, that like Eric Johnson can blaze away on these lines, but when he slows down the video, you can see how far he gets away from the string on hooks, but the way he has set up the lines, the way he is like, whether it's 2 notes per string or 3, then 2, then 1, or however it's all done. It's like some people do this naturally unconsciously without thinking, but a lot of people, they sit down, like Yngwie Malmsteen is a perfect example. He only plays alternate picking when there's even number of notes on a string. If there's an odd number of notes on the string, he will down, up, and then pull off. And it's mind-boggling to get around this, but for Yngwie, it's come out naturally after years of playing that way. He just did what felt natural to him. Yes, but it's those sorts of things that, like, us mere mortals that don't think about that, having Troy Grady's system and his courses and stuff up there for you to study and check out, it's been mind-boggling to me and life-changing for me when it comes to my playing. Now, I still have a long way to go to get it to where I want it to be, but like, if I had this stuff 20 years ago, I would be so much better already.
Wow.
Yeah.
I gotta check that out.
So you can tell I'm a little passionate about that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
man. I feel like the picking is the one thing that well, I mean, there's a million things about guitar that I feel, but that's the one that I always feel is holding me back, and that I sort of focus on and almost like dread over, as like, because I'm left-handed, but I play guitar.
Me too.
You know, as most people do, in the right-handed way. So, you know, my left hand, my dominant hand, is doing the fretting, which is advantageous for a lot of reasons. But the having the accuracy with the picking hand and feeling like I can, you know, get from string to string and do, because I rely a lot on left-hand speed, which is like a great way to sort of have speed without having speed, right? And like a lot of the videos that I've checked out and online lessons, it's like, well, just use your left-hand speed, because it's like, but if you want to get even good at just like, you know, playing, you know, like a 16th note, like Edge of 17, like playing that cleanly,
sure.
and evenly, and it's
in
like
time.
forget it. Like I've tried. I was like, man, this is like, and I'm just like, well, I wish I'd learned guitar left-handed because maybe it would be easier. But maybe I just need to study up on this course.
I think you should check that out. Like, here's one thing from my lesson with Billy that I will tell you, and it's been life-changing for me, is the fact that your fretting hand is what makes the music. The picking hand just makes it louder. So if you can make the music with your fretting hand, then that's all you have to worry about. Don't the picking hand will catch up. Billy, he doesn't think about picking. Even though he can shred so fast, he focuses on his left hand, making sure that. So the fact that you can play fast with your left hand is amazing already, and you can do it. It's a stylistic or genre choice that you're making to try to impart the picking on top of that to get a certain tone or attack or feel from the notes. So it's just that it's more like we don't want to get into a competition with others because we think all that sort of stuff's happening. We just want to make sure you're playing the best music possible,
Yeah.
And that's where if you don't feel like you're playing the best music possible, then work on your picking.
Yeah. Well said. That's a good motto though, for sure. Yeah, the picking hand will catch up. Yeah. That's a good motto. Yeah.
Yeah.
So big. I don't know how we're doing for time here, but big topic that I did want to hit up, and I know you're. I don't know if we said this in the beginning, but you're a Yamaha Guitars artist. You're also a Line6 artist, and Mike and I have devoted like a substantial amount of podcast time to talking about the Helix because we're both. Cool. Neither of us are hashtag sponsored, but we're both psyched about just like direct guitar in general. We're both like, with open arms, like bring it on, man. Like I have not been like an amp purist just because of how like I think amps sound amazing, but it's just because of what's the right word? Like how maybe cumbersome's the right word, or just involved it is to even just to haul an amp around from gig to gig, but like to get a tone in a studio. Like I remember doing the Aberdeen stuff in Vancouver with you, and like Dean, like I don't know how long it took to get, the tones were great, but like it probably took an afternoon to get like a tone out of, you know what I mean? And it's so, the if you want to talk about better or worse, or if music is dead because of Pro Tools and direct guitar, like that's a different discussion. But the possibility that this could become a little bit easier has got me pretty fired up. So like I don't think I've played it, and I've said this before. I don't think I've played a gig on an amp in a couple of years at this point. So like I have so many questions about the Helix. I don't even know if I know where to start, but like it maybe we'll start here. Like I picked up the Michael Britt pack recently for the Helix, and I think I don't know if a lot of people out there are like me, but like for me, like I just want to start playing. I have a hard time sitting there and tweaking tones, and I'll do that if I need to do that. Like I programmed for the David James tour, like every sound, all the automatic switching on and off for boosts and all that stuff. And it's like, if that's what I gotta do, that's what I gotta do. But I also would just love to just pull something up and have it work. And I think like it's common feedback that people give is like, well, it sounds too digital, it sounds too in your face, it sounds too bright, it sounds too fizzy. So are there sort of approaches that you take kind of off the get-go to address that sort of a thing, to just sort of get yourself in the ballpark, or are you using presets, IRs, like packs that people should be checking out? That was a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Oh man, there's a lot of stuff there. Okay, first of all, I'm the same as you. When I got the TR gig, I had a few different amps, and I was like, I just want to go to one amp. So I sold my other amps, and I bought myself an AC-15. and I've used it once in the last 4.5 years or whatever.
Yeah.
Like I've used it once. It's just been sitting on my shelf, and it eventually, and that's partly because I live in an apartment and I can't use an amp without disturbing my neighbors. So that's where like the digital stuff is huge. It's amazing. I got into digital stuff back in 2000. I got back into digital stuff pre-2000 with the Boss GT3 effects processor. And then I went, it was a little blue thing that it was pretty, I think you could the reason I got it was because I saw someone use the GT5 and thought the tones were awesome. And then I got it and it sounded like crap. And I got rid of it, and I got the GT6 and still didn't sound good. And then I got I went to the Line6 Pod XT, and it sounded okay, but still not good. And then, over the years I went to what was it? Not Amp Farm, but like Amplitude, Guitar 5, or a bunch of like, even the Logic Pro has the built-in amp sims. I'm like, man, it still doesn't sound good. And I kept on thinking, man, digital stuff doesn't sound good. And then I realized, what's the one commonality between all these products? It's me. I don't know. I didn't know how to use them. I didn't know how to use them at all.
Yeah.
So I think 2015, I got a Kemper, and I still have my Kemper, and I love my Kemper. It's a great piece of gear. It does a very specific thing, really interesting thing with the whole profiling aspect of it. It's amazing. And if I was a studio player, or if I was in a band and I was in a studio using amps to record a record, I would profile those amps and just bring a Kemper out on the road and not have to worry about amplifiers at all on the road. Like that's what I would do 100%. Mm-hmm. The first year with Thomas, I was using Kempers there. They had some that were in like that his company owned that the previous player was using. So I was using that, and I like the Kemper a lot. And I love the Kemper. I love the Helix. I've never used a Fractal Axe Effects, but I'm willing to bet I would love that too. I think the world of digital guitar amplifiers we are there. We are there. Can it get better? Yes, but we are there. I have no complaints about any of them. The only complaint is that I don't know how to use them as well as I should. Sure. I find, like, you're right. The Helix, especially, the difference between I described to people is like the difference between the Helix and the Kemper is the Helix gives you, if you want an AC30, they give you their version of the AC30, and you have to spend the time tweaking it to make it sound like how you like it. Mm-hmm. The Kemper, you can go and find online, or you can buy thousands. There are thousands of profiles of an AC30, but you have to go through all those thousands of profiles to find one that you like. So you're spending time one way or another trying to find the amp sound that works for you. Mm-hmm. So that's the biggest difference between them. And so with the Helix, there's a little more programming going on, but I like a lot of the flexibility and stuff going. So I was using the Kemper the first year, and then I switched over. I got the Yamaha deal, and Yamaha had just purchased Line6, and so my Yamaha rep was like, "Hey, do you want to try the Helix?" And I thought, great, I can do that, but I have to be able to match the tones. Like they have, like with Thomas's gig, it is like we work with a really amazing musical director who is actually Taylor Swift's musical director as well. And he is one of probably the top 3 best musicians I've ever met in my life. He's unbelievable. He can hear you're playing an F sharp minor 7 at the 9th fret, and he'll be like, no, I want to hear the flat 7 on the high E string. I don't want to hear it on the G string. I'm like, how did you know? How did you hear? Like, how do you hear these things when you're listening to everything going on? So yeah. And his whole deal is we have to protect the music. We have to respect the music, but we have to protect the music. And by protect the music, when it comes to gear and comes to tone, is like we have to match. We have to sound like the record. This isn't you're playing the right chords, but the tone isn't exactly like the record. That's fine. When you get to the Thomas Rhett level, and I think I will take this on any gig from bar band stuff to I don't know, Michael Jackson level or U2 level type of gig. like you want to protect the music, and protecting the music means matching the tones that people are expecting to hear when they come to the show. When they come and hear a song, and they're like, that's the song, but it doesn't sound like the song. Like something's missing or something's off or something's different. Like we can get away with that as to a certain extent. But I think our goal as musicians in no matter what instrument, we want to protect the music, honor the music, and match the sounds that people are expecting to hear as much as possible. So I switched from I received a Helix from Line6, and I spent my off season between 2017 and 2018 making IRs of the Kemper cabinet section to put into my Helix, and then I would bring up the same amp model in the Helix that I was using. So if it was an AC30 on the Kemper, I would bring up the AC30 model in the Helix and then start tweaking from there. And I would say within 1% of tone sounding the same because of creating the IRs that I did there. So and I've been with Helix ever since, and Line6 ever since. I really enjoy the Helix. I love the community that's online with that, and I also really like the support that I receive. And I think any Line6 over the last couple of years has really demonstrated their community and user support goes beyond other companies in the digital amp world right now. There are guys that just spend their whole day in online forums just seeing if people have complaints about stuff, and they like if a unit is broken or something like that, they will reach out to them and say like, here, let me send you a new one, send that one back to us, we'll get you sorted. And that means a lot to me as someone who's like really big on customer service. Like you want to be treated well especially when you get into the thousands of dollars that you're spending on a piece of gear. If something happens to it, you want to know that they'll take care of it. So that's really good, and that's why a huge reason why I like using the Line6 stuff.
A bunch of things that you said there. It's like, I feel like, like the missing factor with the digital thing. It's like, oh yeah, Nathan was the only thing that was the same between all those. And it's true. Like it's the same with me when I played the Helix at first. Kind of revealed a bunch of things about my playing that it's like, oh, Mike, you hit too hard. Like that's your problem, so there's definitely that. And also obviously tweaking it. One of the things that you said though, it's like, getting the tones to like protect the music. I don't think you can do that as well on amps unless you have multiple amps on stage. You know what I mean?
And that's exactly it. That's 100% why we're using digital amplifiers right now, because the number of times that like amp tones aside, the number of times that we'll be in a production rehearsal and the front of house engineer will come on and say, yeah, Nate, 14.5K is poking out really hard. Can you throw an EQ on there with a Q of 1.5 and bring it down by 1.7 dB? And I will be like, no problem. And I can walk over, I can pull up on the editor on my laptop and do that right away. And you can't do that with amplifiers. That makes the front of house guy's job a lot harder to mix. If there's one frequency that he has to search for, do any of that sort of stuff. And because like I said, it's really easy to make. And your point exactly, like I'm using matchless, I'm using Fenders, I'm using like the models, I'm matchless Fenders, I'm using Marshalls, I'm using Supros. I'm like, there's so many different amp tones that I'm using that you would have to carry 5 or 6 amps if you're going to get the tones as close as humanly possible.
So speaking of the Helix as well, have you guys seen this? I literally just saw this maybe yesterday. I'm going to just post it on here.
Stomp XL?
If it loads. Yes. The Stomp XL.
I haven't seen this.
I'm so excited because I had the Stomp. It's apparently processing. It's just like an HX Stomp, but with 5 extra buttons. Because I bought the expansion, or just like a MIDI controller to get 2 extra buttons. But I've been using the Line6 M9 for maybe a decade, and it was my favorite thing ever. But I sold it and got the HX Stomp, but I'm missing the extra buttons. And the XL.
Ooh, that's a spicy little meatball.
Yeah, I'm gonna sell. I'm literally like working on in the next few days selling my Stomp in preparation for this. I know it's not out yet, but it's not even gonna have any gigs before it's out.
It is pretty cool. I've got my Stomp right, and I think if I was like I probably the same. I got the $30 switch off of Amazon to give me an extra 2-foot switch as the Mosky switch, and that's great, and that's all I need. I think if I didn't already have the Stomp, I would go get an XL, but for whatever everything, like it's really nice to have that expandability with the foot switch, because it doesn't change the guts, it doesn't change the sounds, it doesn't give you any extra functions except rather than having this and rather than having like this and this on a board, it's just like built in together sort of thing with 4 or 5 extra buttons to allow you to turn stuff on and off easier and whatnot. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
The M9 was that I could be on a bar gig and just have a scene, set up of like 6 effects and be like, yeah, I need most of these. And then maybe if I needed some rare shit, I'd have a separate scene, and I could just do the gig and kind of on the fly, just be like, oh, I want that effect. I want this effect. And I did that on the HX Stomp, but it was just cool to have, the color-coded buttons. And so I'm very excited.
Yeah, I actually ran 2 years ago. Thomas's dad, Rhett, opened up the show for TR. Rhett Akins he's a huge songwriter. He's had 30 number ones in the last 20 years. He's just think of any song, he probably wrote it or co-wrote or whatever, but he was opening up the show and I actually used the Stomp with an M9 and a few drive pedals. So going into it on a Pedal Train Junior, and I ran out to a DI and it went to front of house. It was unbelievable. It was amazing. And it was great. And I just used the Stomp as a stereo backline. That was it. There was no effects, no anything. So I ran the M9 in stereo into it and used it just like if I was going to a festival and they had an AC30 and a twin as backline. They would just it was pretty awesome to play that show and just run it off of this little box basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you're touring,
back to what you were saying, Alan.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, you were going to say?
I was just going to ask, are you...
I was just going to say back to...
Rick, delay. Okay, you go. You go.
Okay, I was just going to go back to your original question. Things that can help and make things better. Especially when it comes to the Helix. And even with other modelers, the Kemper IRs are huge. IRs make the difference. I find the Helix stock cabs have gotten better with EQ tweaks and whatnot. But pulling in IRs into the Helix has really upped the game. It sounds really awesome. You can even import IRs directly into the Kemper now through their editor software it'll convert them automatically. And the same with the Fractal Axe effects. You just drag them into the editing software and it'll convert it for you. But I've been using, there's a company, York Audio, Justin York. He's a pretty prolific IR manufacturer in the last year. He actually used to shoot or did some IR shots of cabs for Own Hammer back, a few years ago. And then he started his own company, and I've been using his. I had planned in 2020 to use his IRs pretty much exclusively on the TR gig because they sound really, really good, and they make the amp models in the Helix sound like the amps should in real life. So that's a huge one. But the other thing I was going to say is, like, especially if you're going digital, 99% of the time we're all using in-ear monitors, right?
Yeah. And
so the biggest complaint I have with the Helix, that some on like the Kemper, there's a function called space that is pretty much baked in, and you can't, unless you know to go turn it off, you don't realize it's on, sort of thing. But is the room reverb sort of sound or feeling that you get, because sometimes you're like playing, like, this doesn't feel good, and I think it's more of an auditory thing. So what I've done, especially in the Helix, is like my chain is always now amp, maybe something in between the amp and the cab, like a compressor or something specific that I want to do there. But right after the IR or the cab, I always put a room reverb that is just giving me a little bit more of the room, this like, now it feels like an amp. And then post that, I add any like the actual reverbs, like the bigger rooms or the springs or whatever, and delays and modulation. But Yeah, but like for me as an in-ear digital player, like that makes a huge difference with the Helix, especially.
Is that something that only you're hearing just for vibe, or that is also going out to the audience?
That's going out to the audience, but it is, especially on the Helix, it's the legacy room reverb. I just bring up the stock settings and just bring up the mix ever so slightly, and it's literally a feel thing.
Yeah.
It's like it's adding those room reflections you would get into your microphone if you were miking up a cab.
Yeah.
Because what the Helix is great at is it is an authentic model of the amplifier, but it is not giving you any of that room and that air getting into the mic. So that's
it's like super clean, essentially.
Super sterile. It's like you're living.
Yeah.
Well, so that's the funny thing that I keep saying to the people that knock digital stuff. It's like, well, the reason that it doesn't feel right or sound right is that you don't know how to work it, and I still don't know how to work it as well either. I feel like someone who has supreme knowledge of like digital amps versus someone who has supreme knowledge of like how to mic an amp, like they'd be very comparable. You know, like because you're like most guitarists, including myself, are not super experienced with like sitting with a mic and tweaking and being like, oh, this is where the SM57 goes and this is where the Ruyter goes, and on this cab I like this. But if you had that power with the Helix, you could do that live. You know, you're not gonna bring a Ruyter out for live stuff. You know, like it's crazy.
Well, I just think the fact that if you know as a guitarist that you like for me, I know I love a 57 and a 421 on guitar cabs. That's like for some reason I've always gravitated to that. So when I open up IR packs, I always, one of the first mixes that I go is the 57 and 421, and I'll say 90% of the time that is the IR I stick with because I know that that sound, I know that sort of thing. It's the same with like sometimes, no matter what, if you're which unit you're using, if you're a guy that's only ever played Fenders and AC30s in your whole entire life and you've never actually played a Supro or you've never actually played a Marshall in real life, if you pull up a Supro or a Marshall model, you're not going to know how to tweak them. Like that's a huge thing, you know, like the real world counterparts can be beneficial. So I think like for somebody who doesn't have any miking experience, I think going from a digital amp and saying, if you go into a studio and you're like, well, they've got real amps, I might as well do that. I really like the sound of the 57 and the 421. They'll be like, okay, cool. Let's try that. You know, those sorts of things can like really be beneficial both ways.
They're not like mutually exclusive. Yeah. Also like miking distance too. Like, oh, could you back the mic off? You know, on my presets, I like it when the mic isn't so close, you know, and it's like,
exactly.
So
exactly.
Cool.
Yeah. The world of digital, like anybody says it doesn't sound right. It's one of those things like you have to have some grace with people, because I think when they say it doesn't sound right, it's actually, it doesn't feel right. And that's because you're not standing in front of an amplifier that is blasting your kneecaps off at 115 dB or whatever it is, you know? Because if you went into a studio and had an amp in a mic in an amp locker down the hall, and you're just sitting in the control room listening back to what is mic'd up and compared that to what a modeler or a profiler of that amp is doing, they're going to sound 99.9% the same. They are. So like, just, I think that's a huge thing. That all being said, sometimes there are certain frequencies that do get a little more, because you're not pulling the mic back that extra 2 inches or moving it forward that extra 2 inches, you're losing some proximity effect or whatever, or gaining proximity effect on an amplifier that you don't have on certain profiles or models or whatever. So you may have to, I find like when people say it's shrill or brittle or stuff, room reverb and then a high cut on the speaker cab is huge for a variety of modelers and profiles. I think that's huge. Line6 just in their cab lock, last year with one of their updates, they set the stock setting on the high cut to 8 kilohertz, where it used to be open at like 24 kilohertz. So bringing that stock setting down to 8 kilohertz took away a lot of that fizziness or digitalness that people used to complain about. So that's something to be aware of, you know?
They're almost like learning, because it is a new form. They're like learning, or I guess like trudging the new like path of like, well, what do people want to hear with these things? Just in the same way like gear manufacturers for like tube amps and like guitars, or it's like, oh well, people want with the Stratocaster we want a 3 pickup guitar instead of a 2 pickup guitar, and then people started using, they had the 3-way switch, and they're like, well, people are using the in-between switch, so why don't we just make that a thing? It's the same with that. It's like, well, people are always cutting this down to 8K. Why don't we just do that automatically?
Yeah, exactly. People like, I think there's, like I said, you have to have a little bit of grace with people that don't understand, may or may not have as much experience as you with a certain piece of gear or technology. And it's like, just like back when I had the GT3, I didn't know what was going on. And I thought it sounded like crap, and it didn't sound like crap. I didn't know how to use it, So it's like,
sure,
you gotta, there's a learning experience and I'm still learning stuff every day with the Helix and with like any of the gear that I'm using. It's like, that's half the fun. Like I've learned a lot about setting up guitars over the last year, and not even a lot. I mean, like, I think I talked with Al about this over text a little while ago about like the neck straightness and like when neck's pulling back and stuff, and how much humidity has to play on that. But also, like, one of the best tools I ever got over the last year was a stainless steel ruler, because when I was measuring the curvature of the neck, sometimes we just like hold down the low E string at the first fret and tap at the 17th fret, and we see if there's any space in it. But like, that's not accurate across the neck. So like, using a stainless steel straight edge to actually check the straightness or the bow or the back bow on the neck was like, it was huge. It was game changing for me, because I can now accurately say, like, I like my action this way, and I like this actual height, and you can test things. So like, just learning, we're always learning about life. So and gear's part of life. So it's fun to learn that stuff. Yeah.
Gear is life.
I have one other question. I have one other Helix question. Are you using the Stomp when you're touring, or are you using like the full on floorboard one?
We're actually using for TR. I was using the Stomp when I was playing in the Rhett Akins band, because that was just like on my pedal train junior and that. But for TR stuff, we're using the rack, and I have the control for the rack up on in front of me. But the control in front of me, I've got a volume pedal or expression pedal attached to it that is my volume, and then I've got I use snapshots. And the control and the volume pedal in front of me are actually just my oh shit backup, because all of my tone changes, all of my program changes, all the song changes are all sent automatically to the Helix from our tracks rig, which is running time code with the lights. Yeah. So like, I can do that solo 200 feet down on the catwalk and have a ripping solo tone. And then when I have to go, like last year, one song this is exactly what happened. I had a shredding solo, and then it sounded like Van Halen. And then 2 seconds later, I had to have like a Nile Rodgers funk sound. And I couldn't run all the way back to my pedal board and get that sound happening. But the tracks rig sent the time code out to the Helix and did the program change for me, so I didn't have to worry about that. So that's a really, really cool thing about the digital world, is like, if you have any DAW, we're running Ableton, but I've seen people using Pro Tools. I've seen people using Logic to send out program changes and time code. It's a game changer for putting on a show, because rather than me worrying about having to run back and do a tap dance on the controller, I can focus on entertaining and playing right and entertaining people. Whereas you never used to be able to do that. So yeah, digital amps are really amazing. Really amazing.
Did you do all that MIDI programming yourself?
I like programmed all the tones in the different snapshots, and then I actually, being the anal retentive nerd I am, I have a spreadsheet for all there's 128 program change blocks in the Helix with control change MIDI control changes for the 8 snapshots. So I've got that all laid out. And so I actually type all this stuff in, and then I send that over to our tracks engineer, and then he puts it into Ableton based off of my notes. So he knows, like, oh, this is verse 1, so I put the MIDI CC to this number on this program change. And for the solo, I put to snapshot 7, and he does all that stuff ahead of time. So it really helps save time during rehearsal process as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I was doing that for the David James tour. Rich and I like delved into the world of trying to get MIDI to do what you wanted to do, and I was just curious if you were doing it yourself, because there's some little, I mean, for, you know, like you said, mere mortals like us, like I don't really know what MIDI is. I just know that it's a thing and you can use it to do stuff. So like there's some little like idiosyncrasies with it where you're like, well, I'm telling it to do this, but it doesn't, you know, you just figure out workarounds. You're like, well, if I offset it, it'll actually do it at the right time. And if I use this number, it doesn't work for some reason. And like, yeah.
Well, that's totally it. It's even like simple things like there are 28 program change messages available, but Line6 starts at 0 and goes to 127, and Ableton starts at 1 and goes to 128, or it might be backwards.
Okay.
So you have to offset by one number to get the right thing happening. It's just like it's between manufacturers. There's still not complete, you know, cohesiveness going on. So there's stuff to work around, but like the things you can do, even with like some of the, like you could use the Helix to turn your amp on and off. Like if you have, like if you're running 4-cable method, or not change channels, not turn it off, but change channels on your amp and doing that sort of stuff. Or if you still use like the Strymon Timeline or Big Sky or any of those other digital reverb or delay boxes, you can set up MIDI. And so when you hit the one snapshot, it turns on and changes the program. It's unbelievable.
Yes.
And like there are guys like our tracks engineer who's on the road with us. I'm pretty sure his job before this was just building tracks rigs for all the, like for Nashville and LA and New York based artists, and ensuring that when you press the button, MIDI 1 gets over here, but it converts to MIDI 0, and then this light turns on over. Like that's his job, and it's a huge job. It's an insane job, and like I said, I can do a spreadsheet, but I won't go that far. Like it's pretty intense what you can do with it.
Yeah.
I have a theory, cool stuff. And this is really wacky and getting out into the weeds. I have a theory, and I've kind of tested it, but technically, couldn't you set up a proper recording like signal chain with the Helix and use it live? So like the idea is like, not that every signal chain with recording is like a analog preamp, analog compressor, but like I have my Helix, and I actually, like, for a little bit I ran it through a stereo compressor, like an actual analog like hardware unit, and then an actual real preamp like that you would record microphones with. And I don't know if it sounded any better, but it's an exciting idea, right? Like, because
there's a guitar player, Louis Allen, who plays for Sam Smith. He's a Helix guy, and he runs his Helix into a pair because they're just mono units. So he runs in a pair to the Warm Audio, which models? WA, not the 84. It's one of the EQs. It's the blue one. Forget the model.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But like he does that because he likes to like just tweak on the output just a little bit. Like I think once I actually get into a place I know I'm going to live for a little while, I'm definitely going to be running like into some Neve strip, like the Helix. Have my Helix rack at home that I go into some Neve stuff into, like into at very least get a pair of distressors to have on the output of the Helix to go into Logic or Pro Tools or whatever after, for sure, because that stuff is cool. But the cool thing about the Helix as well, though, is that you can run sort of like a fake mastering chain. There's a great YouTube guitar player, instructor, gear guy, Jason Sedites. I'm pretty sure that's how you say his last name.
Oh yeah, I know him. He's kind of got an accent, right? Like it's almost like a Brooklyn or like New York accent.
I don't know. He lives down near London but might be the guy. But he's got a whole series, and his whole thing with all his Helix signal chains is that at the end he always runs an EQ or a couple EQs, and then a stereo limiter, basically, to sort of glue everything together, just like it's the Helix 1176 block sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So he does that in his patches. So like there's definitely a thing there for sure.
Shit. There you go.
Yeah. It's not a theory. It's a thing in practice. You got it.
I've busted out the stomp at a couple of recording sessions recently, which feels really hilarious to do. Like you walk into like Metalworks or whatever studio and you're just like, yeah, can I just get like a line? Can I just get like an XLR line to this little box here, and like away we go. And there's a lot of kinks to be worked out, but it's pretty exciting, man. And even in a recording studio situation, then you're not dealing with amp bleed into the drum mics and like stuff like that, right? So it's
I was just gonna say the amazing thing too is like if you're using the Stomp or the Helix as their audio over USB, you get 8 channels of audio. So what you can do is record. You can record your tone and record, but you can also record, like what I've done in the past is I record my dry amp tone stereo to tracks 1 and 2. On channels 3 and 4, I run my stereo effects so I can mix the effects after and get a better feel. But then I also record a mono on channel 8 or whatever, a mono DI signal, so that I can go back and I can reamp after the fact, either into the Stomp or into the Helix again, or you could send that out to an amplifier or whatever. I think that like the whole USB audio thing is pretty amazing, and it gives you so many options.
I didn't even know this was a thing. So you can like you plug your Stomp in via USB and you record through the USB instead of like a XLR cable.
Yeah, it acts as your audio interface, and you do it that way. And so like it's pretty amazing to do it that way. And like I said, just the fact that we were doing pre-production back in, I want to say it was February or March, before everything got completely locked down. But what we were doing was like we had our musical director send us an idea, and he's like, I want you to record this stuff so that when we get to rehearsal, before we get to rehearsal, we can get it approved that this is the arrangement and all that kind of stuff. And I did one pass through and sent it off to him. He's like, yeah, it's cool, man, but if you don't mind, if you can just like, and I just sent it to him like a printed thing. And it's like, if you can send me separate, dry guitar and effects tracks so that I can mix it myself. And like, I said, okay, cool. And like 2 minutes later, I sent it to him. He's like, wait a second, what? And I was like, I already recorded it that way. I just did a 2-mix sort of thing for you. So like, it's pretty impressive.
That's super cool. I gotta go down that rabbit hole now. Figure out how to do that. That's sick. Yeah. That's so cool. Man. So what's next for you? I mean, like obviously for any of us, it's kind of like we'll see, I guess. But do you have anything coming up or any sort of things in the works over the next little bit?
Like you mentioned earlier, my wife gave birth to our daughter in January last year, and so I was sort of planning on being home for 3 months and being like dad at home for 3 months and then hitting the road and stuff, and it would have been amazing. But instead of having at home with my daughter, I've had the first year of her life, which is amazing. I'm so lucky. I don't know any other touring musician like, yes, this year has sucked hard, but the fact that I got to spend the first year at home with her is I will never ever regret. That all being said, I was so focused on her last year that I really kind of like I didn't really have any goals or anything other than her for a while. But this year, I've started, like I said, I've got this new Instagram account, Nathan Whitney Music, and I'm starting to put up some what I call honesty and practice videos, because I think one of the biggest things on YouTube and Instagram is like you see guys that are perfect. You see videos that are perfect. Yeah. And it is demoralizing. And I'm just like, there are some guys that I see post there that they're either, I know they are playing perfectly, so that makes me demoralized, but that's okay. Those guys I know are perfect. But then there are people that are obviously it's faked, but it's faked to such a certain extent that you can't tell. And you're like, is this really good? I don't know. So I've just been doing these little things, posting things where it's like, this is what I'm working on right now. And yeah, I might have played it 5 or 6 times before I got the one that was like, okay, but like, here's what I'm working on. And I think that's something I'm sort of going to be focusing on this year, is just being like, I think there's something honest and human in showing your flaws just a little bit on, into the world. You don't want to reveal I'm not going to show a video. Well, maybe I will show a video of how I sound. Actually, I already posted one of how I sound like as soon as I play first thing in the morning after getting back from walking the dog sort of thing. And it's not great. It's slow and whatever, but it's human, So
Yeah.
I'm really big into being a human this year. And so that's also like, whether it's like being a good dad or a good musician or a good friend, or, just being that person on the internet that says it's okay to suck once in a while,
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Or if you're like me, a little more frequently than once in a while.
Yeah, so it's okay to just suck. You said that you were doing backing tracks as well. You're like releasing backing tracks.
Yeah, I started through on my website. There's a page that's backing tracks, and one of the things I started last year is like, I don't know about you guys, but I search for backing tracks to practice along with. And one of the things I'm always looking on YouTube, and like, some of them are great, some of them are not great, some of them don't exactly fit what I was looking for. And the first thing I was looking for was just a simple single note drone that would go on for a certain amount of time, so that like I could practice whatever scales, arpeggios, chords all over a single note drone that didn't have any tempo associated with it. I could turn on my metronome and do that. So I made a bunch of those in a varying length from 2 minutes all the way up to 30 minutes. And I started using them for myself in my practice time. And I thought, well, maybe other people could get some use out of this. So those are available on my website. It's a link to a Gumroad sort of thing. But yeah, I'm really excited in finding, things that hopefully I can use in my own practice time that I can share with other people, and hopefully they can get some use out of as well. So that's the first one that's up there. I do expect to be releasing something similar with some tempos associated with different feels and that kind of stuff. And it's, people have said, well, you should start a Patreon or a subscription service. And I think that's great for a lot of people, but for me, I'm not the type of person. I wake up in the morning, I'm like, oh, I have to do that today. I have to put out some more content for my subscribers or whatever.
Sure.
That's not me. That's not me. I'm the type of guy, like, here's a product. If you want to buy it, cool. If you don't, okay, no, fine. But I just don't want to. Yeah, that's my biggest thing. Yeah. So creating more product like that to make available for practice and for people to use or not use at their liking.
Right on, man. Right on. All right, well, I think that's a pretty good place to wrap up the show here for the most part. Thanks a lot for taking the time, man. I know we all joke about how we're not doing anything and like we're not busy, but like we are all also busy, and you've got a family, and I'm sure you've got other stuff that you're filling your time with. So we do very much appreciate you taking the time, and frankly, it's good to see you and chat with you, man. I hope that there comes a day soon when we can just grab a beer and hang out like the good old days, The
good old days.
Driving in Northern Ontario, eating Cliff Bars, trying to survive. All right.
Oh yeah. That's what I meant. So
yeah, man, it'd be really good to see you guys. Hopefully, I know you're all out on the East End, so yeah, when it's all said and done, it'd be great to get together and have a socially distanced coffee or beer or something like that and hang out.
Yes. Yeah, even that. So again, yeah, NathanWhitneyMusic.com, at Nathan Whitney Music on Instagram. And if folks want to reach out to you about private lessons, or maybe just chatting about how to set up a sweet Helix rig or that sort of thing, they can get in touch with you those ways.
Yep.
And I don't. And I mean, recording as well. Like I know you do some. We were just sort of talking about recording setups, but I know you've played on some records for a bunch of artists that we know. So if people are looking for a great guitar player for their record, they should reach out to Nathan and hire this beautiful fella because he's great.
That would be lovely. Thank you.
Similarly, if you need lessons, or maybe some sweet acoustic guitar playing, or maybe you need a track mixed or produced right from scratch, you can find me at Alro Music on most social media platforms. If you're looking for lessons, steel guitar, film scoring, programming, synthesizer kind of stuff, sound design kind of stuff, or just good old-fashioned electric guitar on your next project, or lessons in any of the above, you can reach out to Mr. Michael Hebbs at Bruno the Meek on Instagram. You can find the podcast anywhere you love to listen to podcasts, and you can find us at Music Guy Podcast on Instagram and Facebook, and all the past episodes are available for you to stream. musicguypodcast.com. Thanks again for listening, everybody. We'll see you next week. Bye for now.